So listen, for the Republican reaction to Governor Tim Walz's speech, let's bring in his opponent, of course, on the other side of the aisle, Ohio Senator and Republican Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance. Senator Vance, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Okay, just making sure you can hear us okay. Let me ask you this. There were some attacks leveled against you here tonight at the convention, including from Pete Buttigieg, who suggested that you believe that people essentially don't count if they are, for example, childless or not the kind of family that you want to see them be. How do you respond to that?
Well, of course I don't believe that. I think that everybody has worth, and certainly you have a lot of people who just haven't had families. It hasn't worked out for them for reasons they can't control, and that's, of course, totally fine. I think what I have said is that we want our country to be more pro-family, and more to the point, what I worry about when I watch the Democratic convention speeches tonight is there's no reference to how we're going to lower the costs of groceries and housing for middle-class families. There's no reference to how Kamala Harris's policies have closed the border because, of course, they've opened the border. What they've done here is they've basically made an argument that if you vote for Donald Trump and you want change and you want a better future for your children, that somehow you're a bad person. What I think what the Democrats should do is actually point to Kamala Harris's record and point out how her policies have made people better off, not attack me and Donald Trump, and most importantly, the people who vote for us because they're unhappy with Kamala Harris's policies and what they've done to the country.
You know, Senator Vance, Governor Walz took some shots at you tonight. He made fun of the fact that you went to Yale. He says, like all regular people, I grew up in the heartland. J.D. Vance studied at Yale. He said that you trashed your own people in your best-selling novel and that your career was funded by Silicon Valley billionaires. When you meet Governor Walz face-to-face in that debate on October 1st, what are you going to tell him?
Well, first of all, what a nasty personal attack. Why isn't Governor Walz talking about Kamala Harris's record and how she's made the lives of the American people better? The answer is because he can't say that. He can't point to her policies that have lowered inflation, lowered the price of housing. He can't point to her policies that have lowered the cost of food. So he's attacking me in a very personal way. Look, I signed up for it, but I want Tim Walz to articulate how his vice presidency is going to make the lives of the American people better. Look, I was raised by a grandmother in a poor family where my grandmother didn't even graduate from high school. She made a lot of sacrifices towards the end of her life to ensure that I had access to some good educational opportunities. I think my family ought to be praised for sacrificing to give me some opportunities. That's the story we see all across our country. I'm incredibly proud, not just of what I've accomplished, but most importantly, at the sacrifices my mom and grandmother made so that I could have a chance at the American dream. That's a good thing to me, and if Tim Walz wants to attack it, he's welcome to, but why don't he talk about what he wants to do for the American people?
Your running mate has suggested that the issue of reproductive rights, he believes, is not going to be a big factor come November. Democrats are making the opposite bet, and that has been very evident here at the convention in Chicago with the issue of reproductive rights, access to abortion, and access to fertility treatments very much on the table. Can you get specific about what your ticket would do to protect IVF, to protect fertility treatments like IUI?
Well, look, we support access to fertility treatments and want parents to be able to access this stuff even if they can't afford it because we believe that babies and children are good and we want more Americans to have families. Now, the real contrast, of course, is that Donald Trump has said that he thinks abortion policy should be made at the state level. And meanwhile, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are talking about taxpayer-funded late-term abortion, about shutting down Christian hospitals because they don't want to perform certain types of abortions. Look, that is not how you respect differences of opinion. I think what Donald Trump is really trying to do is be pro-family and articulate a solution to some of these culture war topics that allows the country to come together and solve some of these disputes at the state level where voters can make these decisions, not the national government.
But he hasn't committed to not seeking a federal abortion ban. Will you do that tonight?
Well, Donald Trump has explicitly said that he doesn't support a national abortion ban, and he wants California to make California's abortion policy, and he wants Ohio to make Ohio's abortion policy. And again, I think it's important to recognize the moral leadership that Donald Trump is showing here. He's saying we want to have a compromise here. Let the states and the people in those states make the determination about abortion policy. The national government, we're going to focus on lowering the cost of food, lowering the cost of housing, fighting back against the Chinese theft of our manufacturing jobs, jobs. That's what our national government should be focused on. And by the way, it's not just vision and talk from Donald Trump. He actually delivered these things during a very successful 4-year presidential term. Really, in some ways, the contrast here is between the failed leadership of Kamala Harris, the successful leadership of Donald Trump. Look, we can get back to peace and prosperity. We just have to elect Donald Trump as president of the United States.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.